You sit down alone with a plate of food. Nobody else is home. You pull out your phone, scroll while you chew, and finish the meal barely remembering what it tasted like. Somewhere underneath that ordinary moment, something faint and uncomfortable stirs. A small, nagging sense that this isn't quite right. Not because the food is bad. Not because you're doing anything wrong on paper. Just a quiet unease that has no obvious source. You probably assume that feeling is random. It isn't. The real answer is far stranger. It reaches back further than any habit you picked up this year, or this decade, or even this century. It reaches back to a time when eating alone wasn't just uncomfortable. It was dangerous. Think about how many other everyday feelings get dismissed the same way. A flicker of unease in an empty parking lot. A reluctance to walk into a silent room. Most people brush those off as mood, or overthinking, or nothing at all. But some of the oldest, most persistent feelings humans carry aren't random noise. They're leftover machinery, built by an environment that no longer exists, still quietly running in the background of a body that hasn't caught up to the world it now lives in. For most of human history, food wasn't guaranteed. A hunt could fail. A gathering trip could come back empty-handed. Weather, injury, and bad luck could turn a full stomach into an empty one overnight. In that kind of world, survival didn't depend only on your own effort. It depended on your relationships with the people around you. Anthropologists who have spent time documenting hunter-gatherer communities have found something remarkably consistent across very different parts of the world. Among groups like the Hadza in Tanzania and the Ache in Paraguay, food sharing isn't a nice gesture. It's a structural rule built into daily life, almost like a form of insurance. When a hunter comes back successful, the meat doesn't stay with just that hunter's family. It gets distributed, often according to fairly strict social expectations, across the wider camp. Why would anyone give away food they worked hard to get? Because hunting is unreliable. Some days you succeed. Many days you don't. If everyone only ate what they personally caught, entire families would starve during a run of bad luck. But if success gets shared today, in exchange for an unspoken expectation that others will share with you tomorrow, everyone's odds of survival go up. Not because people are generous by nature, because the group that shares outlives the group that doesn't. That system wasn't written down. Nobody voted on it. It emerged because groups who practiced it survived, and groups who didn't quietly disappeared from the historical record. It's worth pausing on how strict these systems could be. Among some documented hunter-gatherer groups, the person who made the kill often had the least say in how it was divided. Distribution followed customary rules designed specifically to prevent any one person or family from hoarding, because hoarding threatened the entire group's survival strategy. The system wasn't built on trust in any one individual's goodwill. It was built on a shared understanding that this was simply how things worked, enforced by social expectation as much as by any formal authority. Here's where your discomfort with eating alone starts to make more sense. Meals in that world weren't just about calories. They were the primary moment where social bonds got reinforced. Sharing food was how trust got built, tested, and repaid. Eating together wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was the machinery that kept a small, vulnerable group alive through hard seasons. Which means eating alone, in that ancestral context, wasn't neutral. It was often a sign that something had gone wrong. You'd been excluded, or you were isolated, or the group's usual rhythms had broken down around you. None of those situations were good ones to be in, because in a small band with no surplus, isolation could be a death sentence. Modern researchers studying well-being have found something that echoes this pattern almost too closely to be coincidence. Large-scale surveys tracking daily experiences and life satisfaction across dozens of countries have consistently found that people who share meals regularly with others report meaningfully higher life satisfaction than people who eat most of their meals alone. This holds even after researchers account for income, employment status, and overall social contact outside of mealtimes. Something about the act of eating together specifically seems to matter, not just general socializing. That's a strange finding if you think about it purely in terms of nutrition. A meal delivers the same calories whether you eat it alone at your desk or across a table from someone else. The nutritional value doesn't change, but something else clearly does. Some of these studies have tracked the same people over extended periods, which lets researchers rule out an obvious alternative explanation. That happier people simply happen to eat with others more often, rather than shared eating actually contributing to happiness. The pattern held up even when researchers controlled for a person's baseline mood and social tendencies. The act of sharing a meal appeared to carry its own independent weight, separate from someone's general disposition towards socializing. Researchers studying human social bonding have pointed to the physiological side of shared eating. Sitting down to eat with other people tends to trigger the same bonding responses that come from other forms of close social contact. Shared meals create small, repeated windows of vulnerability and trust. You're not just consuming food together. You're signaling on a level older than language that you're safe enough with these people to lower your guard while your attention is divided and your hands are occupied. That's not a small thing, biologically speaking. Eating is one of the few moments in daily life where you're genuinely less able to react quickly to a threat. Your focus narrows. Your guard drops. For most of human evolutionary history, doing that around strangers or doing it completely alone in an exposed environment carried real risk. Doing it around people you trusted was one of the few times you could fully relax. You don't consciously think about any of this when you sit down to eat by yourself tonight. But your body may still be running an old, quiet calculation shaped by hundreds of thousands of years in small, interdependent groups. A calculation that reads solitary eating as at least a mild signal that something about your social safety net is thinner than it should be. Consider how differently your body treats a meal shared with close family compared to a meal eaten quickly at a desk between tasks. The food might be identical. The setting changes everything. In one, your shoulders drop, conversation meanders, and the meal has no clear endpoint. In the other, you're often still half focused on whatever comes next, treating the food as an interruption to be managed rather than an event in its own right. That difference in posture and attention isn't just habit. It reflects two very different modes your nervous system slips into, one built for safety among others, one built for vigilance while alone. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the modern world has quietly restructured itself around exactly the pattern that ancestral biology treats as a warning sign. Work schedules have become less synchronized across households. More people live alone than at almost any point in recorded history in industrialized countries. Meals have shifted from communal, multi-person events to something closer to individual refueling stops, timed around whatever schedule happens to be convenient. None of that makes eating alone shameful or something to panic about. Plenty of people eat alone by choice, and plenty of solo meals are perfectly fine, even genuinely restorative. The point isn't that solitary eating is inherently harmful. The point is that the low hum of discomfort some people feel while eating alone isn't a personal flaw or an overreaction. It's an old signal, doing exactly what it evolved to do, even in a context where the original danger no longer applies. It also helps to recognize that not every instance of eating alone carries the same weight. A single quiet lunch on a busy day is unlikely to register as anything meaningful to a system built to track patterns over time, not isolated incidents. What that old signal is more attuned to is a sustained pattern, meal after meal, week after week, with no shared table in sight. That's the kind of steady absence that would have mattered to a small ancestral group, and it may be the kind of absence your body is still quietly built to notice now. Understanding where that feeling comes from changes what you do with it. If eating alone occasionally leaves you a little flat, that's not weakness. That's a survival instinct responding to a modern environment it was never designed for. And if you notice that feeling showing up often, it might be less about the meal itself and more about a gap in the kind of regular, shared contact your ancestors could never have gone without. Anthropological fieldwork among groups like the Hadza also shows something else worth sitting with. Meals in those communities often stretch out. People linger. Conversation happens around the food, not despite it. The meal itself becomes a container for connection that has nothing to do with nutrition. Compare that to the modern habit of eating quickly, often alone, often while distracted by a screen, treating food as fuel to consume as efficiently as possible before moving on to the next task. That shift didn't happen because sharing meals stopped matching to human biology. It happened because modern life reorganized itself around convenience and individual schedules, while the deeper wiring that responds to shared versus solitary eating stayed exactly the same as it's been for a very long time. So the next time you notice that quiet unease while eating alone, you're not imagining it, and you're not overreacting. You're feeling the echo of a rule that once meant the difference between a group that survived a hard season and one that didn't. A rule that had nothing to do with the taste of the food and everything to do with who was sitting beside you while you ate it. You sit down alone with a plate of food tonight. Nobody else is home. But the real answer for why that feels different is far stranger than habit or mood. You're not just eating dinner. You're running an old, quiet check on whether you're still safely inside the group. And your body has been running that check for longer than any calendar can measure.